Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday service of Now Creations. A joy to have all of you with us here this morning. May I remind you, right at the beginning, that the most important quality of life is that presence within you. You're in touch with that presence right now. Just a matter of focusing your attention on it and allow it to be director for you through the course of today and every day. Just a couple of other comments. First of all, I hope you enjoyed our newspaper ad this morning. It came to you by way of an email. If you haven't opened it yet, I think you'll enjoy it very much. We're just trying to reach out to people in our communities gently and yet in a way that might stimulate them to come to a better understanding of who they are. I also want to call your attention to Monday morning, The Impersonal Life by Joseph Denner. We're off to a wonderful start with the group. Encourage you to join us if you're able to do so. Monday from 10 to 11:30. Let's begin. My dear friends, it's been a great joy to witness your response to last week's teaching on doing what was seemingly impossible to even fathom a few years ago or even a few months ago. You will recall that the very first thing in what seemed impossible at one time is now very clear and very definitive for you. You have ended the game of separation because you have accepted, you have allowed, you have breathed in that you are created in well-being by our loving Creator. I can't stress this enough, that you are created in well-being by the loving embrace of our Creator. This movement to the acceptance of well-being was then the basis for the second seemingly impossible understanding that you are able now to see yourself as a modern-day Christed presence in the world. You have come to realize that just as Jesus and all of the great avatars had done before you, so also you now, you've accepted your role as a modern-day Christ because you have accepted the fact that you are created in well-being and for well-being. The acceptance of these two things, that you are created for well-being and that you are a present-day Christ, have enabled you not only to end the game of separation with its lower energies of fear and doubt, wondering if you're ever going to improve, but also now paving the way for the next two seemingly impossible things that are the subject of today's teaching. These two seemingly impossible things that are now quite possible. But before I address these next two things, there are two comments that I would like to make. The first one is that you are now doing what seemed impossible. You are now doing what seemed impossible because you first did what was necessary and possible to develop your spiritual foundation. It's important to understand this. You realize that the doing of the seemingly impossible has been built on the firm foundation of doing what was necessary. As you begin your day, the very first thing, to dedicate it to ushering in the kingdom of God, to have that daily meditation, to have that go-to phrase, and then to read over each day those 10 habits of daily enlightened living. It is doing the necessary things that have enabled you to seemingly do the impossible. And then, of course, those possible things, everything just seeing yourself from an eternal soul spirit and realizing that every encounter in life is a holy encounter. Because you have done the necessary and the possible, you have built a solid, rock-like foundation for your spiritual awareness. Secondly, so many of you are now beginning to understand the importance of belonging to a spiritual community. This has become more and more important to you. I say this because so many of the questions that you individually have had get answered in our spiritual study groups and sessions of Now Creations. I encourage you to realize that it's so much easier to grow together, and that you might make a commitment to the higher realization of our spiritual awareness with others who are of like mind and like spirit. It's important to come together and to grow together. With these two introductory comments having been made, we are now ready to explain the third and the fourth aspects of what seemed to be impossible at one time. The third one has become my favorite one. The third seemingly impossible thing that is now becoming quite possible for us is the practice of energy well-being, or if you like, the practice of energy medicine. Let me explain. First, I want to guide you to receive the full explanation of energy well-being by viewing my seminar on the crystalline structure of the body that was given on Saturday, October the 21st. You can access it by simply going to our website, scrolling down to at the beginning, at the header, clicking on Special Seminar Archives, not only to receive the teachings, but also the worksheet outlines. It's very important you do this, and perhaps to view it not just once or twice, but several times. The teachings themselves in both sessions are quite good, but so are the question and answer periods of the first session and the meditation in the second session. I encourage you to take the time, 2, 3, 4 times, to view the crystalline structure of the body. The essence of the seminar is that our physical bodies already have a crystalline structure. And these crystals are located in the DNA of our genes. They are located in the photosensitive rod and cone cells of our eyes. They are in the myelin sheath of our nerve cells. They are in the collagen molecules that make up our connective tissue, our fascia. They're in the muscle molecules of actin and myosin. And they are in the phospholipids of our cell membranes. I want you to know that I spent about a half hour already this morning just welcoming in the light, welcoming in the higher energy to activate these crystals within my own self. With this understanding that we already have a crystalline structure within our bodies, we need then to ask, what was the missing element? Why did we access the higher possible crystalline structure? It's a good question, friends. I think you know the answer. Just think about it for a moment. Why didn't we access the higher possible crystalline structure. You know why? Because, come on, you know the answer. Because we have played the game of separation. We dimmed our light, the God Spirit within us, to play the game of separation with all of its lower energies of fear, doubt, worry, and anxiety. But that game is over, done with, no more, kaput. You see, the problem was not that we didn't have a crystalline structure to raise our energy, but rather the real problem was that we didn't have enough light from the God Spirit because of our choice to play the game of separation, which is now over for us as soon as we decide that it is. As soon as we decide that we are now realigned with our light, that we are created in well-being. And again, I just spent that half hour just bringing in the light, bringing in the well-being of the life force of our Creator. As soon as we decide that we are no longer under the old identity of being a limited human, but now have reassumed the fullness of our spiritual identity as a soul spirit that has not left our source. As soon as we accept the fact that we are created for well-being. Just remembering those incredible words of Jesus when he said, you, referring to the people of the time, with all of your limitations, when your child asks for a loaf of bread, you don't give them a stone. When they ask for a fish, you don't give them a snake. Well, how much more your Heavenly Father, without limitation and with such abundance, will not give to you what you ask for. That's an incredible teaching of Jesus. We have been created for well-being. We are now ready to truly assume our full status of a present-day Christ. So listen now to the direction that is possible for us to assume a crystalline structure within our physical bodies. Let me preface it with a caution. The caution very simply is that our soul is in charge of what we are experiencing through our persona in this lifetime. So with this caution, always understanding that your soul is in charge, let me now suggest what is possible with the understanding that you do have a crystalline structure of the body that can elevate you beyond your present-based carbon system. So here's the key. Here's the key. You have to bring in the light. You have to bring in the life force to activate your crystalline structure. In order to practice energy medicine, in order to practice alternative healing, in order to practice preventative medicine, you have to bring in more light. Plain and simple. You have to bring in more light. And let me suggest that it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. Number one, You are done with fear and doubt. You have ended the game of separation. Number 2, you are created for well-being. As A Course in Miracles states so well, you have been created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not forget this. And you are no longer forgetting this. Number 3, bring in more light. Bring in more light. That's what I was doing this morning, bringing in more of the light force to activate my crystals. This is the key to bring in more light. How do you do this? You do this by taking the time for your spiritual practices to focus in on the universal principles and values of the God Spirit, and realizing as you do this, you are not only created for well-being, but you also have a physical body that is receptive to well-being. I want to repeat that. As you bring in more light, it's very important to understand that it's not just that you're created for well-being, but you have a physical body that is receptive to this well-being. We just have to get out of the mindset of illness, aging, and death. We have to get out of that mindset of fear and doubt. While these mindsets at one time seemed impossible to get out of, you now realize that you are suddenly doing what you thought was impossible, to get out of this mindset of lower energy, because you understand that your loving Creator has created you for well-being. Each of us has to focus on this teaching. I am created for well-being. I am created for well-being. We've got to absorb this, feel it, experience it, and as we do so, to be a source of well-being for others. You must come to accept the fact that not only are you a recipient of well-being, but you are also a contributor to well-being as we enter the universal flow of life. To realize that we have a crystalline structure in our physical body that is not only receptive to the light, but also is activated by the light, stores the light, and amplifies it for our continued well-being. It is this light that recalibrates the frequency, the vibration of our bodily fluids and cells, and can raise them into a new sense of well-being far beyond what we have previously experienced. You begin to realize that the more you are open to the light, you have an entire internal pharmacy, not just to ward off disease, but also to raise the health of your physical body, as well as your mental and emotional bodies. You begin to think that the limitations that you brought upon yourself were precisely that, self-imposed limitations. They were remnants, leftovers from the game of separation. And as you now leave those old thoughts behind, you begin to enter into the higher thinking of the light. You're doing this. We are doing this. And then you begin to seriously entertain the truth. You begin to seriously entertain the truth that your consciousness, part of the God consciousness, is playing the primary role in your well-being. That being conscious of well-being underlies and organizes your physical body, just as the experiments of quantum physics have shown us. That there really is a quantum world directed by consciousness, in addition to the mechanical world of the third dimension. That energies such as the Oversoul, the Christed Oversoul, and the I Am Oversoul are alive, evolving energies available to you when you make them available to yourself. Because you've been created for well-being. Let me clearly state that the crystallization of the body is now quite possible for us. What seemed utterly impossible is now becoming much more within our realm of possibility. Yes, it does take work. It takes a commitment and a devotion that hitherto has not been asked of us. I want you to know that such a commitment and such a devotion is the future pathway of now creations. We're doing this together. We are inspired by the fact of what we have experienced so far, living more happily and confidently than we ever have in the past. And this higher experience, founded on the trust that is based on the fact, founded on the trust that is based on the fact that we are created for well-being, and we will make our contributions to it, now brings us to the fourth quality of what seemed impossible. The fourth quality of what seemed to be impossible is the confidence that we now have in our future. We have that confidence because we see our future now not in the context of a limited human perspective, but rather from the perspective of our eternal soul spirit that has been created for well-being. I find this confidence in the future nicely presented in these two ways. The first one is that we are open to the X factor. What's the X factor? The X factor very simply is that we are created for well-being, and that we will direct our individual future from the presence of the knowing of that well-being within us. And that whatever will happen for us, it will always be growthful for us, for we are created for well-being, always meant to be wherever we are, as the light, confident that others as well as ourselves are going to be growing through this particular moment. That's the X factor. We are created for well-being. That's their confidence builder. The second is just kind of a nice little phrase. It's rather interesting. It comes from this little interesting phrase. What's right with you is the point. What's wrong with you is beside the point. What's right with you is the point. What's wrong with you is beside the point. What would be wrong with us would be for us to continue to play the game of separation. That game is over. It is beside the point. What is right with us, that we have been created for well-being by our loving Creator, who has created us in the image and likeness of itself, that's the point. That's the point. That we have a crystalline body able to receive the light into our physical body. That's the point. It is the point of how we are created, in love from our Creator, with a crystalline structure of the body. That's the point. That is the pathway of our future. In conclusion, I have presented 4 ways, 4 aspects of life that at one time we thought was just impossible. However, because you have done what is necessary and what is possible, you are suddenly now realizing that you are doing what hitherto seemed impossible. You have realized these 4 things. You are created for well-being. You are a modern-day Christ. You are raising your physical body into a higher crystalline structure, and that you realize that you are confidently heading into the future because of the X factor of being created in well-being. That's the point. This is quite a journey that we're on, but we're quite confident that we have done what is necessary and possible, so that we are now accomplishing what seemed to be impossible. That seemingly impossible has now become the doable. And I would not be surprised if what seemed to be impossible becoming the doable will be the doable that leads us into more impossibles. I would not be surprised. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. We are doing this together because we realize and are devoted to the importance of our spiritual friendships. Let's go. Let me now take you into meditation, and what a joy it is to do so. Let's begin as we normally do by again just focusing on the breath. Just focusing on the breath. Allowing that breath to settle our body, settle our mind, but most of all, bring you to the fore. And would you renew the basis for what seemed to be impossible, namely that we are created for well-being. Did you think about that during this past week? Or did you just go about your normal business? Are you absorbing the fact that you are created for well-being? How did you do this week? If you did pretty well, I bet you began to accept yourself as a modern day Christ. The second aspect of what hitherto we thought was maybe impossible, that you really are a Christed being because you're created by a loving creator for well-being. This is just what Jesus understood. And in so doing, became Christ. And then that third aspect, which is very important for us now, to understand the crystallization process of our bodies, that bringing in greater light has an opportunity of raising the energy within our body because of the crystals that are located within it. It's a possible pathway forward. Did you remember the things from the workshop? Or did you forget them, or maybe haven't listened to them yet? Did you forget those 6 places where the crystals are located, among many, many, many others? Did you bring in more light to activate those crystals in your DNA and eyes and muscles and nerves, your cell membranes, the fascia? Yes, you have to do the work. Until it becomes what you most want to do. So here's what I suggest to you. You know the 3 points we try to make by way of whether something is true or not for you. The first one, of course, is it logical? Does it at least make sense? And then secondly, does it feel right? It makes logical sense to understand the crystalline structure of the body. It certainly feels right within yourself. But the third test is always put it into practice and see if it works every time. Put it into practice by bringing in the light, whether it's through your meditation, through the unified chakra, a wonderful tool for doing so, or whatever other spiritual practice you do, bring in the light. Sit down, take the time, as I did this morning, as I do every day. Take the time to bring in the light and see if it makes a difference. Not just in your mental and emotional bodies, but also in your physical body. Just see. Put it to the test. Try it out. See if it works. All the time. So that you might, in Bob Monroe's language, convert an unknown into a known. But there is a crystalline structure. And that then becomes a basis for the X factor that enables us to confidently move into the future. Namely, that we are eternal soul spirits created for well-being. And we have proven that to ourselves. That's the X factor. We are eternal soul spirits created for well-being that we have proven to ourselves as we confidently move into our future. And yes, of course, we're doing this together. It's very important to feel that you're a part of a spiritual community, that you might devote yourself and commit yourself beyond your individualism, and to realize that you really are a part of something much bigger, that you understand the importance of spiritual friendships. Return now to your natural breathing rhythm. And as you do so, would you just realize how good you feel? Dare I say happy? You might be buzzing from your crystalline structure. Might be. That might be the reason for the smile on your face. As I invite you to gently breathe your eyes open, we're doing this. That's the point. I am an eternal being of light and love. Thus, only good can come to me, and only good can come from me. And we are eternal beings of light and love. Thus, only good can come to us, and only good can come from us. Namaste.